All
People
right,
watching?
and I think so. I think we're already live. So.
Oh, on Facebook.
Good. All right. So glad to have you here, David. And I know that you have an amazing community called the apacmarketers.com, right? Tell us more why, if you're a performance marketer, everyone should join this community. And tell us some of the interesting things or takeaways from your recent virtual lunchtime discussions.
Yeah. So APAC Marketers is just a community of people who think and spend a lot of time caring about APAC. So they don't have to be in Asia. Some folks are in the US who maybe serve Asia. So it's just a way for people to get together, because I think a lot of the stuff around marketing is like very Western focused. And so if you're a marketer in Asia or you're serving APAC, it can sometimes be hard to learn what are the stories on the ground, what works in Asia, what doesn't work in Asia, and just, if I need a referral for an agency, or has anybody tried to hire for this type of role. So it's bringing those people together who kind of have the same type of problems, and I'm just trying to get the smartest people as I can. We all learn from each other. So those virtual meetups, they're pretty casual. Most of the time we run them without any sort of topic. It's just, hey, you're a marketer, you have 30 minutes, let's get over on a Zoom call, hop into some breakout rooms, and just chat about either marketing, or we don't have to chat about anything in particular, which is very important in the time of COVID, the pandemic, because as coffee meetings are no longer really a thing. In some countries, they're like illegal. So it's just a good chance to meet some new people on Zoom, have some new conversations, and get people together who care about APAC.
I absolutely love, communities, especially, when I see people forming communities. I think it's a great thing to do. And of course, it's one way to give back as well, right? And of course, when you have more conversations with people, you also lean into the community, you also learn from that community. So what are some of the interesting topics that have come up recently? Are there like a lot of findings from recent, post-pandemic marketing activities or trends that have really piqued your interest during all these virtual meetups?
One of the things that keeps jumping out is people always say that, hey, pandemic, business is down, and retrenchment and like budget cuts. Well, that's true probably on average. I think the interesting thing is if you drill down into different types of industries and different types of companies, for some companies, this is the best time for them. It's a growth period. And so I think that's something that's been interesting and jumped out at me. So an obvious example is Zoom. They were doing well before, but now they're doing extremely well. Or like DocuSign, or another company who was doing well before the pandemic, but now that we can't physically meet each other for contracts, e-signatures are a thing. And so all across Asia, you're seeing this type of story play out as well. So some industries, they're adapting because so HubSpot, the company I work for, is an example where we have like marketing and sales software, CRM, so digital transformation, digital marketing, all that kind of thing. And we were doing well before COVID, but now that offline businesses is now moving online, salespeople can't go to door, they can't fly across different countries to meet their prospects. All of that stuff is moving online, and so we're seeing a bit of that as well. So it's interesting just the way the different industries and different markets are affected. So I think in terms of what the effect COVID has, that actually, once you drill down into the nuanced level of company level, industry level, all sorts of interesting stories happening on APAC.
This is brilliant. And, we definitely have to segue quickly because we don't have a lot of time for this particular podcast episode. Let's dive into your career and your current role as Asia Head of Marketing for HubSpot, which is, something that every marketers love to utilize for their marketing activities and more. So maybe tell us a little bit about the HubSpot. Who is your client base composed of, during these times?
Yeah, I think HubSpot, like the core market we serve is those marketers who are tired of working together, MailChimp and WordPress and Google Analytics. So just like stitching different apps together. So they have a business that's already kind of working, but they've gone to this point by duct taping, 8 different apps. They have a landing page app, they have an email app, they have something for their CRM. And what HubSpot does is it's just all in one place. So that way it's much easier to scale. It's much easier to communicate with your sales team because now you have all the same data that you're looking after. And that also allows you to have better ROI tracking because now since everything is in one place, if you run a Facebook ad, you don't have to like wonder, okay, how many people did I actually get at the end of this campaign? Whereas everything is one place, you run the Facebook ad within HubSpot, the email list is within HubSpot as well. So you know what people are actually doing at every step of the journey. And so that allows you a lot better tracking, and allows you to have better ROI in your marketing campaigns. So that's the people that we serve.
Okay, I think your internet is probably dropping off a little bit. Maybe can you exit the chat room and then you come back again using the same link? Let's see whether that works.
What if I just turn off the video?
Yeah, okay, I think we can hear you, but we can't see an image right now. So hopefully you'll be back on pretty soon. Let me see. Can you come back in again? Try again.
Sure, let me try again.
Okay, we don't see you. We'll probably see you shortly. So anyway, we have David, who is the Asia head of marketing for HubSpot. And today he's here to share with us his awesome community, which I'm always been very interested to participate and to join since a long time ago, and heard a lot of great things. So this is an opportunity for us to find out more about his community, as well as all the great things he has done, for HubSpot. And I understand that you have done a lot of content, and recently you have even started, interviewing some of your guests on like how to do, growth marketing in Asia. And with so little content right around the world that are focused in the Asian region, Asian marketers, as well as all the growth companies and all these growth marketers who are doing great work to scale their operations and scale their expansion into Asia, right? So you have a lot of knowledge about this region, and definitely we want to dive into like your take on like India, on Korea, Singapore especially. So I think let's back you up first and go back to when you first started. How did your journey actually get started? How do you get started in HubSpot?
In HubSpot, well, it connected to what we started the show with. We noticed that there wasn't a lot of people talking about marketing, or there's no community for marketing, or well, there was, but it was less marketing, tech marketing. And I eventually met with someone who worked at HubSpot and found my way into HubSpot through that. So just vouching for the power of community, connecting, networking, meeting people.
Fantastic. And of course, with the COVID-19, right, this era of mass content consumption, and everyone is like popping up live every 5 minutes. Everyone is doing webinars as well, or like streaming their podcast live as well. So, you've been doing a bit of that, and you can tell us, some of your hacks, or in particular, like live streaming and webinar, which are currently raining, right? Everybody's doing it. So how do you actually do it? How do you inject creativity in that? Yeah.
The thing with webinars is, everybody, I totally agree with you. Everybody's doing a webinar now. And we were expecting for people to be tired of webinars, at least with HubSpot. Like, oh man, we've been doing webinars for a while. We're one of the original people who are doing B2B webinars, and now everybody's doing one. Nobody's going to sign up. But we've actually found the opposite, that everybody's at home and people are trying to figure out how to navigate through the pandemic. So they're actually willing to register for more webinars. They attend more webinars. So our advice there is figure out who your customer is, work backwards from what their pain is and what is currently top of mind for them, and make sure your webinar addresses those things. So one of the things that we did at the start of COVID was we launched this campaign called Adapt 2020. So for people watching this or listening to this, just Google Adapt 2020, you're going to find it. And it's a lot of resources, webinars, ebooks around how marketers can navigate this pandemic. So the advice there is don't just run webinars for the sake of demoing your product or using the webinar as a way to like slyly talk about what you sell and your services. Like actually try to help people, try to add value, and you're going to get a lot of webinar attendance and show up every time.
Really great advice. I think it's very important, not to think even about monetization, not to think about selling. And sometimes it's great, to be very personal during these webinars as well. People are more interested in the authentic and the real you. So it's 100%, interesting for us and our audience as well to know about you and your career and how you started. So maybe you can tell us about, the first live stream that you made or produced that you are most proud of.
Stream that I did.
Yeah.
The first live stream that I did. Okay.
Was it before the
HubSpot? Yeah, we've been doing this for a while, so I can't even think of the first one.
You can go back even earlier in your career before you joined HubSpot. Did you do any webinar or live streaming?
Insights from that, and we would get journalists attending, and after that, like journalists would write media articles about us. They would put us in their reports and all this kind of stuff. So what I learned from there is that every company has some kind of data that they're sitting on top of, some kind of interesting insights sitting within your company, big or small. And so as a marketer, it's kind of up to you to unearth those insights. And whether you share them on a live stream, on a webinar, turn it into an ebook, turn it into a blog post, social media posts, it's your job to figure out what the interesting story is within your company, turn that into a medium that your audience is going to appreciate and understand. And I think that's going to go a real long way in making sure that you're ensuring the growth of your company in your business.
This is fantastic, and it's quite inspirational for the rest of us. COVID-19, right, hasn't been a huge challenge for you. I know it's been a huge challenge for everyone, right? Like I'm working from home, and I believe from your background of you're also working at home right now, right? So,
Yeah.
challenge for you. How do you still create or tech produce or for meetups or live interviews and still continuously roll out content? Because I think you're really active on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I mean, COVID is kind of like it's a situation where there's so much new information, so many things are changing. So I think it's actually a great time to be producing content because, like I mentioned a while ago, is people are looking for guidance. People are online more than ever. So one of the stats that we released as part of that Adapt 2020 campaign is, website traffic is at all-time highs. Live chat is at all-time highs. Email engagement also at all-time highs. So people are just online. They're looking for guidance. They're trying to understand how's the game changed, the old world. How is there a huge change in the new world? So as a marketer, again, huge opportunity for you to think about how can you guide and shepherd people who are in your following and in your audience to this new world so that you can build those know, like, and trust markers for you, not just yourself personally, but for your business. So it's been a great time to produce content, and we just want to be as helpful as possible. I want to be as helpful as possible. So the stuff I post on LinkedIn doesn't necessarily have to be connected to HubSpot. I just enjoy giving value and sharing what I know.
This is fantastic. I think the next question will be especially interesting for our international listeners or those who are viewing this on LinkedIn, right? They want to find out exactly, what are the things that you personally have found out about starting Asian marketing ecosystems recently. I understand that you're quite, your fingers are on the pulse of what are the actions, over there in Korea and in India, especially. Maybe give us some of your current findings from those regions.
Yeah, I think especially for international folks, right? I'm Filipino, but I grew up in Canada, and so I kind of have both views of the Asian view, but also the non-Asian view, if that makes sense. I think the number one thing to keep in mind when we talk about Asia or Southeast Asia, or however grouping you want to talk about it, like Asia is not a thing. Like it's a convenient labeling of something that's very complex. Because if you're a marketer, one of the first things you try to do is like, okay, so where's my target market? Where's the most valuable target segment? And that's where I put my attention. But in Asia, that gets really tricky because it's so fragmented. It's possibly the most diverse market in the world. So not only are you stratified in terms of language and culture, but economic development, responsivity, media, channels, it's all different. It's all different in every market. So the challenge for marketers is thinking about which markets do you really want to play in and win, and then really being laser focused on who your target market is, because that's going to dictate how you approach those markets. So what you do in Singapore might work perfectly in Singapore, but it's going to do nothing for Malaysia, and which is going to do nothing in India. If you put all your energy in India, the Philippines market might not benefit. So you really have to have that understanding that it's a fragmented market, and so your marketing has to also fragment in some way, but not lose yourself in the fragmentation. You also have to retain the prioritization.
I think let's dive into Korea, for example, right? I understand also from one of your LinkedIn posts that you realize that the digital marketing activities in Korea is absolutely different from the rest of Asia, from the rest of the world, especially where Google is not banned like in China, right? But over there, Naver really rules in terms of the search engine, the marketing, and also in terms of what the tools that have been widely used by Korean consumers over there. So what can you tell us about the Korean market at this moment?
Yeah. So let's say that you're watching this. You're probably used to living in a world where, okay, I'm a business and I want to rank on Google. I need a presence on Facebook, and I'm going to get people. If you're in B2B, like I'm going to drive leads from Facebook, and then I'm going to rank my top 10 tips on Google. Like that's how we think, most of us, right? But if you're in Korea, like Google is not really a thing. Like it exists and people know what it is. But the thing that dominates people's lives is a portal called Naver. And Naver is kind of like Yahoo 2008 to 2009. If we can remember that far back, like that's a lot of the ecosystem centers around Naver. And so thinking about Korea, which just connects to my previous point, like Asia is just so diverse, and what works in one country is not necessarily going to work in another. Korea is a great example of that, where maybe you have a Google content strategy that works perfectly in Singapore and Malaysia, but in Korea, your content strategy for ranking on the front page of Google is not going to make any difference. And in fact, if you think of Korea as a market, you probably need to have a Naver presence. You might need to have more social media influence. One of the things I talk about in the post is YouTube is huge in Korea, and not a lot of people realize this. Like, but K-pop is huge, so there's a huge following in terms of videos and music. They also have similar followings in terms of similar influencers in terms of beauty and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a marketer trying to make your headway into Korea, your first point of contact should not be, I'm going to build up a huge Facebook following, or I'm going to build my presence on Google, which is the first instinct of a lot of folks. But it's more like, okay, maybe YouTube is a channel for me, social media, how do I take advantage of that? And then Naver, if that's material to my business, how do I make sure I have a significant presence on there?
How about for Philippines? It's also a very interesting region, and a lot of brands are going there as well. More vloggers, more than bloggers at this moment. Is that a trend that you see continue rise exponentially?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that I keep hearing from Filipino marketers who've commented on that post or reached out to me is like, Filipinos are speaking English, but they prefer the video medium as opposed to the written medium. So it was inevitable that once bandwidth rose and the ability to create videos became much, much, much easier, that it was inevitable that vlogs were going to be more popular than blogs. So that's something that we can continue to expect to grow, especially as, Philippines is one of the most mobile connected, digitally connected countries in the world. So I think there's some crazy stat where like for every Filipino, there's like 1.5 smartphone connections. It's just something insane like that. So everybody's hyper connected, everybody's on social media. So it makes total sense that video is going to keep growing in that market. Social media is going to keep growing in that market. And if you're a marketer looking at the Philippines, you probably already know this, but Philippines, if something is you want to be targeting on, those are things that you need to be considering in your marketing mix.
Something interesting is also coming out of India, right? I saw your LinkedIn post where you basically, asking why a lot of companies, especially in India, right, they have most of their team in their home country, but then they have a really random US address. What is your hot take on that?
Yeah, I think it's just because it's about risk perception. My hot take is that if you're wanting to buy software, maybe you have a perception of India being low quality. So that's probably like the first heuristic that a lot of people use. And so Indian companies not wanting to be lumped under that stereotype, they have a US address. Sometimes it's just a PO box in like some random city. Like there was an Indian company that I was researching as part of that LinkedIn post, and it's like they're in Wilmington, New Hampshire or something like what? Like where is that? Usually you'd expect California or Delaware, but then they just picked up. So I don't know, probably it was the cheapest, or maybe they have a relative there. I don't know. So I thought that was interesting. It's something that we're going to see as more and more Asian companies expand internationally. As the talent base in Asia grows, as there's more and more marketers here, there's more startup ecosystem developing out of Asia, out of India, and all these different cities. It's something that we're probably going to keep seeing until the world realizes that there's actually a lot of talent here, a lot of quality products to be made in Asia, and we won't have to do this kind of thing.
And with what's going on in the world, it's changing rapidly, right, day to day. And now a lot of people are also speculating that business will flow to China. You won't be surprised if some of these Indian companies will actually start to list their address, a random Chinese address instead of US, right, in the future. So who knows what will happen and what will transpire. Yeah, exactly. We have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to dive into some technical or maybe performance or marketing related questions where I think you are an expert in, and you give a lot of value to our listeners. Maybe tell us for a start on how do you actually run content marketing at scale in Asia? What are your hot tips on that?
Yeah, content marketing at scale. So I'm guessing you mean how do you produce content at a volume that is not one blog post per week?
That's right.
Yeah. So the main thing there is one of the things I mentioned was you always start from your customer and work backwards. So one of the things that where people get tripped up in producing any sort of content is they just don't know what to write about. And the way to solve that and to unblock yourself is who are you trying to reach at the end of the day, and really do your research on that customer, go deep into their mindset. What problems do they have? What are they trying to get done at work? And once you just do that little bit of research, you're going to come up with a huge list of potential blog post ideas, YouTube video ideas, podcast ideas. So a big part of it is understanding who you're actually going after in the first place, creating a huge list of ideas based on their pain points and based on things they care about, and then rank them according to business value. Maybe I'm a marketer, and I care about K-pop, let's just say, which is awesome. But maybe so don't write a blog post about why K-pop is awesome, because it might not have anything to do with your company. So you start with your customer, think about what type of pain points and things that will get their attention that you can actually create content on, and then rank those based on business value. So that's the first step. And the second step is actually producing the content. So there's a zillion ways you could take advantage of this. Either you do it yourself, which is good if you are starting out and you're trying to figure out if content is even relevant for your business. So I would always start off with that. Like, is this something that means something to my business? Is it worth it? Once you get past that hurdle and you validate it, either you hire somebody to do it or you outsource it to an agency. There's tons and tons of content agencies, so maybe I don't need to get into that. But in terms of hiring people, one of the tips I could share is find other people whose content that you like, if they're freelance writers, and then just reach out to them directly, because that saves you the step of finding a list of freelancers and then having to vet them individually. Just find people whose content that you like and then ping them on LinkedIn, hit them on social media and say, hey, are you open to freelance writing engagements? And then you can go from there. So with those two things, you now have a huge, giant list of ideas that are prioritized based on business value. Find people who can actually produce that content for you, and then just keep multiplying those things until you reach critical mass of content that serves a job.
These are 100% valuable advice for brand marketers and performance marketers, content marketers in Asia. Moving on quickly, how do I actually get my traffic to convert? What's your hot take?
If you start from the place of what does my customer care about, what are the pains that they have, and where do I have business value, as long as you do those three things, you can generally trust that your content's going to convert. Is your content going to convert at 100%? No, that's probably never, ever going to happen unless your target market is 1. And then you get that 1% to convert. So I think where most people get tripped up is they chase traffic and not business. So instead of just thinking about, hey, this traffic has to lead to business at the end of the day, they think, hey, I'm going to get traffic for the sake of traffic. I'll give you an example. My previous company was a Singaporean startup called Referral Candy. And when we were starting out in our content marketing blogging journey, one of the things that we wrote about, so before I tell you what we wrote about, Referral Candy is e-commerce software, okay? E-commerce software. But in the beginning of our blogging journey, when we were trying to figure out content marketing, how does that work? We wrote a blog post that says, like, why do white girls like Starbucks? Like, why do white like? Because we were just going after traffic. We just wanted to get as much traffic as possible. Did that have anything to do with our business? No. Did that traffic convert? Obviously not, right? But then we got smarter and we tested what kind of stuff that people actually cared about and was related to our business. So we wrote a blog post that was something like 55 of the best referral marketing examples in e-commerce. So we're e-commerce software. We wrote a blog post that was very related to e-commerce and was something that our target market cared about. And obviously that blog post converted way, way better than why do white girls like Starbucks. So it's just all about who's the target customer, what are pain points that they have, what are things that related to your business, and then just keep creating content around those things and you'll be fine.
Moving on to the next one. How do I get PR and media coverage for my content?
Well, in that case, it's a different set. So who is the PR that you're trying to get in front of? Is it a journalist for a small trade media? Is it Tier 1, Straits Times, Times of India? So it really depends on who you are trying to convince to write about you at the end of the day. So I think that's the first job. Where are you trying to be very precise around what you are defining as media? Then the second step is kind of related to what I talked about a while ago about App Annie. There's an interesting story in your company somewhere about something. In our case, back then, it was around App Store data and what were the top apps in Japan, what were the top apps in Hong Kong, and how's that changed, who's investing money and where. So that was the interesting data for us. For your company, there's something interesting. It doesn't have to be around the product itself. Maybe it's about your company. So at HubSpot, one of the things that we're proud of is we have a culture that we are very thoughtful about, and we always invest a lot of time and resources in. And so that's resulted in a lot of like Glassdoor Best Place to Work awards. We won like #4 Greatest Place to Work in Singapore last year. And so putting those two things together, we know what kind of media we're trying to get into. We are unearthing interesting stories and narratives in our company, and it's combining those two things. And those two things are usually going to result in PR media coverage for your company.
Fantastic. Let's segue into the last segment, speed round. So I'm going to just bombard you with a lot of questions. Give me short and sweet, quick answers, all right?
I'll try.
So I will try to squeeze as many questions as possible in the next 5 minutes. If not as an Asia head of marketing at HubSpot, where would you have most likely built your career?
That's a good question. I would always be in tech and marketing. I just love it.
What does AI in HubSpot look like?
Our sales team gets a lot of leads, and we have to figure out who the best leads are. And we use AI machine learning to rank them within our CRM.
To what extent do you think collaboration could be automated by AI, machine learning, and IoT, especially?
How are those things connected? Collaboration.
You can say pass, yeah.
Yeah, I can. That's a tough one. Pass.
What's the most interesting aspect of the new features of HubSpot, and how does it fulfill the needs of businesses?
a lot of people are stuck on WordPress and thinking that's the only way to build a website. We just released something called CMS Hub, brand new. Go check it out. It's going to help you build a website much quicker.
Which other tools and technologies do you currently use other than Zoom and HubSpot?
I write a lot. I'm constantly in Google Docs. I'm probably in Google Docs more than Zoom and email. So Google Docs.
Me too. That's like my number one go-to software, right?
Open all the time.
The performance of your marketing, analytics, and sales reporting, how often?
Oh my God, how often? Depends. We do this daily at HubSpot because we see everything. Everything's in one place, as I mentioned. So it's really great. You can see the reporting of marketing and sales. Everybody knows what's happening at the company at all times. There's the power of all-in-one.
3 more. What are your predictions on the most impactful disruptions in marketing operations?
I think analytics is going to get more and more abstracted. So we don't need to get super deep into Google Analytics and like importing, exporting CSVs. I think AI is going to make that a lot easier. So you'll like ask a question into your software and then it just spits out an answer.
Which startups in the tech industry are you watching keenly right now?
Canva. I think Canva is one of those like sleeping giants. So huge company, awesome company, really high NPS. They're going to go public probably soon and they're going to be huge.
How often do you live in Canva?
Once a week. I'm always doing something, slide.
I live in Canva awesome. Like 3 hours a day because I can create so much content. So
it's awesome.
It's amazing. I'm gonna, before we send you off, and maybe we'll end the show in a last with your last maybe a message for our audience as well. What's the hardest lesson you learned working in Singapore for a Filipino like you?
Singapore, hardest lesson. I don't know. Singapore is pretty multicultural, so the fact that I'm Filipino/Canadian doesn't really factor into anything. I would say the most interesting thing about that, though, is just there's so many different cultures in Singapore, and so there's a lot of different ways that different cultures like to work. So learning and adapting to those has been an interesting learning journey. Within HubSpot, certainly that's true, and for previous companies as well. So it's a constant source of fascination around how different cultures can work together optimally, and I think that's going to be something that we're all going to be living with as the world gets more interconnected.
Fantastic. I'm going to urge our listeners to go check you out on Twitter. I think your Twitter posts are very different compared to those on your LinkedIn.
Yeah. You got to optimize for the channel, man. You got to optimize for the channel.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. And of course, see how you think, right, about stuff. You have this website, marketingstudent.com, right? And of course, apacmarketers.com as well. I'll be the next one who will join your marketing community to see part of the, what the community are discussing about and to see the action as well. So maybe to send us off, can you maybe tell us your last message for our listeners or viewers of this live stream?
Yeah, last message. I mean, people who are probably watching us are in marketing. What I would say is just think about what your customer is going through. How can you help them? How can you add as much value? In a general rule, add value before you extract value. And I think it's going to go very far in every type of business.
And be obsessed with your customers, right? So I think that's a great note to end this episode. Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to speak to you today. And I hope to invite you back on for episode 2 sometime in the near future. So let's do coffee sometime in the next few weeks as well. Let's fix something up and maybe do an in-person, face-to-face chat after this, all right?
Sounds good. Thanks, Wade.
Thank you, David. I'll see you very soon. Goodbye. Cheers.